Hi, I'm Chrissy Hutzel, and I'm from Hutzel House of Music. Today I'm going to talk to you about some different ideas for differentiating music instruction for elementary music. In today's session, we will cover identifying students' needs and ways to differentiate while making music, it's singing and instruments, during written work, through the use of centers, and also when we have movement activities. When it comes to keeping track of students' needs, I find that looking through everyone's individual IEP and 504 plans, which is what we use here in the USA, is not the easiest way for me to manage 500 students in my building. So what I like to do is create a spreadsheet that can be used to track what accommodations each student needs. Here's an example of a spreadsheet that I have created and that is available for you for free. There's a link in the handout. This will give me the chance to put in the students' names, quick check boxes for what accommodations they might need, and any other notes. It also has a spot for me to record who is their assigned intervention specialist, who is their homeroom teacher, what grade they're in, and then I can do a quick sort of that file when I need to plan my lessons and make sure that I am meeting the needs of those students. I also highly recommend that you use your resources. There are a lot of people in our buildings or in our districts who are experts on helping students with special needs. If you talk to intervention specialists, they are the experts on creating accommodations and they know their students very well. So it's a great resource for you to use to help come up with accommodations or to run ideas across or look for other ways to approach different topics with their students. You also can work with occupational therapists. These professionals are experts in creating accommodations for students with physical limitations. So I have had lots of help with setting up instruments for adaptive use, whether that be ORF instruments or recorders, and getting help from the occupational therapist has been super important. I feel like it's been more successful and able to help my students better than if I was just trying to brainstorm on my own. They are experts. Go ahead and use them. Speech therapists are also important for us, especially in music when it comes to singing. Students can have disorders such as apraxia of speech that can cause them to not be able to enunciate very clearly. And things that you do in the music room could be helped with some of the techniques that they use in speech therapy. And also, many of our students who are on higher needs have an individual aide with them. So oftentimes that person is very well aware of the student's abilities and can step in to help. It is a nice idea to talk with the individual aides and tell them what the expectations are, because sometimes people step a little bit too far and end up doing too much for their students when we want to see what their students are capable of doing, but they should be there to support and help so that we can see what the students are able to do. As you're working with all of these students, please make sure that you are taking into account their social needs. We do not want to put students into a position where they might not be able to socialize correctly with their peers. When it comes time to planning, seating charts can be, well, of course, a challenge to create, but also can be designed to work to your benefit and to the benefit of your students. If you look in the image that I have here, you can see how I had my seating set up for the last couple of years during COVID. Students were sat on colored spots that were spaced out. And I had different areas that I saved for students with special needs. So in the very front row nearest to the board was an area reserved if I had any students with visual or hearing impairments. Then where I've got it marked that it's the teacher station, that is where I just had my music stand. I mean, it's not like music teachers stand in one spot the whole time, but if that's where your materials are, if I put the students who might need just a little bit of a quick help right there close to me, then I can easily be going to them without having to walk across the whole classroom every time they might need something. You can also do this with a peer if you have a student who has a good relationship and a good rapport with their classmates with special needs. But again, please keep in mind the social constraints of our classrooms. Oftentimes, I have students, particularly those with ADHD, who simply cannot be expected to stay in one spot for the whole time. And while we do a lot of movement in class, there are also times when it's expected that students are able to sit in their seats. For that reason, I tend to put these students on the edges of the rows so they have room where they can stretch out their legs or move around, or in the back row and they have the ability to stand up or move around a little bit more without distracting everybody else. When I have these situations, I do talk to those kids separately, privately, and tell them I understand that you need to move your body and here are the expectations. So they know that it is okay to move, where they're not worried they're going to get in trouble, but also that it's not to be something where they should be silly or anything like that. When it comes to differentiating, let's talk about making music and singing. The first step, of course, is to find out where your students are at with their singing skills. So using vocal play and games with short solos is a great way to get to assess their students' current abilities. You can track their achievement with a quick rubric or scale. You can just make a little mark on your seating chart, a smiley face or a straight line face or a frowny face, a quick number system, just something that you can jot down quickly so that you can keep track of how your students are doing. As you become more familiar with your students' abilities, then you can differentiate by catering to their needs. If you have students who struggle with echoing while they sing, then you can do simpler patterns. For example, I do a singing attendance every day with my primary students, and I typically start with just Sol Mi and do a simple pattern. And at the beginning, I have everyone doing the same pattern. So, where is Johnny? I am right here. And doing that for attendance at the beginning of class. After I've done that a few times and students are comfortable, so it's not an issue of peer pressure or being nervous, I have an idea of where they are, then I can start to expand and do simpler patterns if needed for some students, or also a more complex pattern for intervals for our advanced singers. You can also adjust the tempo and the range and the key to meet students where they are and provide reinforcement or challenges as needed. Eventually, you can also do some differentiation with part assignments, but please be aware and don't put all of your strong singers on the same part. You do need strength and leadership in every section. When it comes to making music with instruments, there are also things you can do. Some of our students might have physical limitations that make it difficult for them to play the instruments that we might find in a typical elementary music classroom. Some of these can be helped with adaptive instruments. For example, many non-pitched percussion instruments can be available with a handle that makes it easier for a student to grasp and play that instrument. If you're looking at xylophones and other similar Orff-style instruments, you can get adaptive mallets, such as these from American Drum, or grip adapters that you can attach to the mallets that you already have. Those create kind of a loop around the handles that makes it easier for students to keep the mallet in their hand. Recorder also often has students with some physical limitations that makes it difficult for them to play. A few of these that I have tried, the Aulos adaptive recorder is an excellent tool, but I will admit it was very overwhelming. I had a student with significant deformities in his hands, lacking several fingers and some that had not formed all the way. And I got this recorder and it comes with very good instructions that I did not understand. So this is one of those examples when the occupational therapist was really helpful in bringing her skills to the table. We brought my student in and the two of us worked together because I had the musical knowledge and she had the occupational therapist knowledge. And we were able to put the recorder together in a way that worked for him. You glue all the pieces into place so it's customized permanently for that one student, and it allowed him to participate. Another option is the Nuvo Plus recorder. These are great for students who lack the fine motor control or strength in their fingers. They have silicone flaps that cover the holes. They sound great. I've used them with some of my students who are on the autism spectrum. They don't have the finger strength to cover those holes all the way, and this has helped them to participate in class. Another option is an adjustable neck strap that you see in this picture here. This is something that I also developed with the help of an occupational therapist for a student who had cerebral palsy and did not have the strength in his arms to hold a recorder up into playing position. So this has a little spring-loaded clamp that you can adjust and bring that recorder up to playing position. So all they have to do is worry about the fingers because the recorder stays in place. Those are also available in my Etsy store. The Aulos and the Nuvo recorders, there are links for those at West Music in the handout. If your students have cognitive limitations, there are lots of things that you can do to help making music become a little bit easier for them. One example is color coding your music and your instruments. So there are some instruments that come already color coded, such as boom whackers or desk bells. You can also add colored stickers to your instruments to help students find the right pitches. You can see an example here of a glockenspiel that I have in my classroom that I've added these colored stickers to. And that way I can easily help students and say, we're going to play your note C, it's the big red sticker. And that helps some of our students find that just a little bit quicker. I also really like this exact xylophone. This is from Parapole, and it has wider bars on the glockenspiel, and that makes it a lot easier for some of my students to hit the target. Another thing that students can have success with is play-along videos. These are often easier to track than printed music. Some of the examples of places that I really enjoy looking for these videos is Musication, which has a lot of great boomwhacker videos that are animated and show the colors and show the notes, and also Mr. Swick's Music Room. Swick's Music has more of the drop-down type notes that students might be familiar with from their video games. My favorite Musication video is the Tetris theme. I like it because it has 3 different speed levels similar to the game Tetris that we all used to love and play. And also it does not require any chromatic notes, so you can play that with just a set of diatonic boomwhackers. Another great tool with videos is to make your own play-along videos that students can practice with. Then also show them how to adjust the speed. So you can see here a video that I had made for my students to learn a song we were playing on the recorder. And if you aren't familiar with how to change the speed of YouTube videos, the gear setting that's down in the bottom, you can click on that and then go to playback speed and change the speed to 0.5 or normal or 100. 50%, 1.5, so you can go faster or slower, and it does not change the pitch. So that is really exciting as music teachers to be able to adjust the speed without affecting the pitch. Students also like to work with each other, so creating partner work and pairing students with a classmate who can assist them is a great way to help students with higher needs. But again, as always, make sure you are aware of the social dynamics. Another thing that can be helpful is making sure that when you're demonstrating, and especially on a barred instrument, that you are mirroring your movements so that students can copy what they see. So for this, I like to sit on the opposite side of the xylophone from where my students are sitting. That way, if I'm going to higher or lower notes, it's going in the same direction, left to right, as what my students are going to be doing on their own instrument. When my students are working on instruments, something that I like to have them do is self-assessment. And beyond just self-assessing, I also like to give them the opportunity to move on to the next step in the process when they are ready. This is a great way to give your students who need a few extra turns the opportunity to do so without holding back students who are ready to move on. This also allows your students who are more advanced or quicker to pick something up to move on when they feel ready. So everyone is able to move at their own pace. So for example, when I teach something on recorder, we will start by speaking the note names and then singing the note names and then adding our fingers onto the recorder and then eventually playing. So if I just repeat the song many times as students are working on it, giving them a chance to stop and work something out in between, then the students can move at their own pace. When I give them that chance to work on things in between, I also make sure that I make myself available to help students who might need it. Then we repeat the song, and students move on when they are ready. Instrument karate is super popular. Some people love it, some people hate it. I happen to be one who really does enjoy it and finds that it works well for me. In these different things, such as recorder karate, students will have a series of songs or skills that they are working to pass, and they can move on at their own pace. So if I do recorder karate, I can have students working on different songs at the same time. When it comes time to assess my students, I can have them come over to me while the rest of the class is working, and I can assess them individually. No one is stopping and listening and watching and critiquing what they're doing. So it's a one-on-one situation. I can adjust the tempo or let them copy my fingers if needed, so I can meet the needs of the students and really challenge them to the appropriate level. Moving on to written work. It is pretty easy to find ways to differentiate in our written work. So I've got a few different examples that I'd like to share. These are all available in my store on Teachers Pay Teachers. So one example is to include answer banks. If you look at these two worksheets, they look very similar. Most students would glance at them and not notice that there is a big difference, and that's done on purpose. I want to provide support for students who need it without making them feel singled out. So in this example, this is an instrument crossword puzzle where students look at a picture of an instrument and then supply the name. In one version of the worksheet, the students do not have a word bank, and in the other, they do. So if I know a student is going to need that support, I can give them that version of the worksheet, and others who don't can work on the one without the word bank. Another option is to provide different levels of information that is provided for the students. So in this example, these are music plus math coloring sheets, and the students have to determine what color to color each section based on the number of beats within each segment. In one version, I will have a chart that is already filled in showing how many beats each symbol gets. And on the other, there is a table at the top that the students have to fill in on their own to come up with that information. On the similar line, you can also have different levels of work that are assessing the same skills. So in this composition activity, I have the same looking worksheet, but in the first one, they have a very simple selection of rhythms to work with, and on the other, they have a much more advanced selection, but the students are still doing the same activity. Manipulatives are also very helpful for our students. We can have things like these treble clef note reference sheets that help our students know what note is what, or I really love these rhythm blocks from Rhythmically Yours. They're available on Etsy, and I'm actually giving away a set of these with the giveaway that's on the end of my handout, so make sure you check on that. I use these, students can use these to think about what they're doing with their rhythms. She has tons of different ideas and lesson plans that she makes available when you purchase the rhythm blocks. And another great way that I've used them is when we were playing rhythm bingo. The kids were able to manipulate the rhythm blocks and figure out the rhythms one beat at a time to find their correct rhythm on their bingo board. Another activity that I like to do is write the rooms. It gets the kids up and moving. So here's an example of a recorder write the room activity. And I had 3 different cards up on the wall, and they were in different colors. So students were all using the same worksheet to record their information, but I told different students to follow different colors of the cards as they moved around the room. That way they were all working on different levels that were appropriate to them, but I didn't have anyone who felt singled out for having something different. I told the students that it was just because I don't want them all copying each other's work, but really it was differentiated for different levels. When you provide digital assignments, which I'm sure most of us have become more familiar with over the last couple of years with COVID, you can also customize who gets what version of an assignment. My district uses Schoology, so this is an example of how it looks for Schoology, but if you use a different platform than Schoology. Just talk to other teachers to find out how they do this. But you can just individually assign an assignment. So you can create different versions of a digital assignment where you can change the difficulty of the question or the number of questions or the question format, provide hints and word banks, different things like that to help your students be successful. You can also add audio. It's very easy to add an electronic recording of yourself reading the questions or the answer choices or providing a hint that students can click on if they need to hear an audio option. Boom cards are a fun way for kids to work on different assignments, and you can also create or work with different levels of boom cards that are testing the same skill. So for example, in this, what you see here is my treble clef spelling notes boom cards, and I have them available in 3-letter words, 4 and 5-letter words, and 5 to 7-letter words. So I can try to differentiate for my students with the number of letters so that it takes them about the same amount of time to finish the assignment. But it looks very similar for everyone. Centers are a great way to be able to differentiate for your students. Create your groups ahead of time with differentiation in mind. Have different levels of some of your assignments at the different centers. Each group can be assigned a color, and then at each center have a folder that is their assigned color. Inside that folder, they'll find their worksheets or materials, whether it's differentiated or not. Everyone can be at each station in their different folders, but that way you can set out different materials for different groups based on where they are and what their needs are. You can also sometimes, it's not always possible depending on your group or the situation or what they're working on, but if it's possible, have one center where students sit to work with you. You can use that time to cater to your students' needs. You can stretch the advanced students, and you can reinforce skills with students who are struggling. And this is a great opportunity for a student teacher. In my classroom here, this was one of my fabulous student teachers, Mrs. Krista Ogden. I appreciate her for being a model in some of these slides, but she was having a great time working with students in centers in my classroom. Let's talk a little bit about movement. Physical limitations. This is something that you really need to know your students and be able to work with them to find what works for each one individually. This is not going to be a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. If you have a student with a permanent disability, I like to follow their lead. For example, I had a student in a wheelchair my first year teaching, and I was playing a little 5-note ascending scale to tell the students to stand up and then descending to tell them to sit down. And I was getting ready to do this and realized, oh my goodness, I have a student with a wheelchair and I did not plan ahead for that. And I loved it. She just took care of it for herself. This was a 2nd grade student. And when I played those 5 notes going up, she just rolled her chair forward a little bit. And when I played them going down, she rolled her chair back. No big deal. She did that all on her own. I did not talk to her about it because as a first year teacher, I didn't honestly think about it ahead of time. So I learned a lot from her, and it's something that I still remember to this day. If you have students with temporary injuries, such as a broken arm or leg or finger or anything like that, then you can work on making adaptations that will be short-lived. For example, if you have a student with a broken left hand, then they can play the recorder with the right hand. But I always make sure that I remind students that they will have to go back to normal when they heal. What if you have an activity that a student simply cannot do? I guess my first thought is, what is the goal of your activity? Is there another activity you could do instead that would accomplish the same goal? Oftentimes there is, and you can make that adjustment. If you cannot make that adjustment, and this is an activity that you need to do, there are some things that you can try to do to make sure that it is inclusive of all your students. Someone can be the judge or the scorekeeper. You could have them start and stop recorded music for the students. You could have them play an instrument to accompany a dance. And I would absolutely suggest switching to a different activity where everyone can be involved quicker than you might if everyone was able to participate in the activity as you originally designed it. I would also like to say that representation matters. We hear this a lot in education, and I want to point out that there are lots of opportunities for us to show examples of people with different physical abilities within our classroom, and it can just fit right into what you're doing on an everyday basis. When you share videos that are showing examples of movement activities or dance, try to include people who have physical differences. One great example of this is the Move It series by John Feierabend. The DVDs that come with that include people who are of many different ages and genders and races and abilities. So there are people in wheelchairs who are part of those videos as well, and it really is great to normalize that to our students who might not be exposed to people with different physical differences on a regular basis. Another thing that I really enjoy sharing with my students, I do share a lot of movement videos and try to show them expressive movement. And wheelchair dancing is a great example. In wheelchair dancing, able-bodied dancers are paired with dancers in wheelchairs, and they are able to put on beautiful performances that are really captivating to watch. I hope you enjoyed this session. We were able to cover identifying student needs, music making, both singing and with instruments, what to do for differentiation with written work, in centers, and with movement. I really appreciate you tuning in. I would like to share that my entire TPT store is on sale 20% off throughout the virtual conference this weekend, so July 14th through 17th, 2022. I've also got a coupon in my Etsy store. If you use the coupon code RENEW22, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. And this code is also valid July 14th through 17th, 2022. There's a giveaway. So I have a set of 5 adjustable recorder neck straps, 2 sets of 5 rhythm blocks, and a set of spelling notes color-coded flashcards available for a giveaway. So there's a link at the bottom of the handout. Make sure you click on that and enter, and winners will be announced by 10 a.m. on July 16th. Good luck! I also have created a bundle that includes all of the resources that I highlighted from my store in this presentation. This bundle has been discounted 30% throughout the rest of the conference weekend, so July 14th through 17th, and then after that it will be at a 20% discount. Due to licensing restrictions, boom cards could not be included in that bundle. Of course, we also have our virtual exhibit hall. Check out here for all of the different items that we have by category from members of the music crew. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me, Chrissy, at hutzelhouseofmusic.com.